Okay. Okay. All right. So this is just on editing formats and how to deal, how to get a message across to students as you read their papers. We have, we can go the old-fashioned way and, at least say what we feel in a very blunt manner, or we can at least do some of these things where we start writing and sort of scribbling and at least we're trying to, make a point here. So, obviously that pen's too thick, but we're going, this is what we typically do. So there are formats out there that allow you, or there's been some long-standing symbols that are used in the whole proofreading world, whether it's newspapers, which is my background, or just in the writing world. So I went and dug up a few that use the symbols I prefer to use. So we have things like a delete, in which it should be really you mark the word as you can see there, and just sort of it's almost like a sideways lowercase e that you scribble out. Then the typical other formats there, and I'm not going to explain all of them. Probably the ones you use most would be the insert, insert a comma here, insert a word here, insert something there, or on occasion space. Telling somebody to lowercase or change things to capital. So in the standard is just write circle word and put a slash. That diagonal slash through E in engineer, if you can see, is a good one to use. And once students realize that you are just once students realize you're not deleting that, but simply that's a symbol for lowercase, and it becomes very effective from then on. And then the same thing for below that, to capitalize something, just 2 or 3 lines underneath to realize that you need to capitalize it rather than, again, writing capitalize this, etc. And then one that we still need to do now and then, we quickly write something as we're reading a sentence and then realize, oh, wait a minute, they had it right the first time. Or they had it right after all. So the term is step. So in an example we have there, it says remove the battery cables. You wanted to scratch it. You mark the symbol for delete over battery. Then as you read further, you go, no, battery ought to be there. So then you write step there. Every year I have to explain what that means to students because I constantly am backtracking on what I have to do. A new paragraph in world journalism, typically you're using 1 or 2 sentences in a paragraph, and I get 10 sentences in a paragraph, and those are too daunting for any newspaper reader. So you have to say, break this up, and I have 2 choices. I can either use that, the standard paragraph symbol, or just make an L, essentially, under the first letter of where I want a new paragraph to begin. It's not on this sheet, but it's on another one. All this course means that you have to tell people what these things mean. So ultimately, you want to go to, here's the website for that one, Biostat Math, of all places, but Google brought that up first. That's the one I liked. For others, as you can see, by the way, punctuation. So to insert the colon, or more often for everybody doing English to realize that it's a colon that goes there, not a semicolon, or it's a semicolon that goes there and not a comma, or a comma there, for God's sakes, please put a comma. And hyphens on occasion. Certainly for spell out, I don't, typically what I do is just I'll circle it and then in the margin still say, spell this out. And then you see some other typical ones I'm not real keen on. I mean, I don't see you're going to use those too much, but there they are. Here's another one. They like to just mark the P for punctuation as if your student really knows what punctuation you want to put there. I don't go with that punctuation. That's why I highlighted that one. I don't think that's enough. They're never going to, you need to tell them. Personally, that's why, this is a comma, this is a semicolon, this needs period. And again, the underlining for capitalization just underlines something like D under the, underline the D under Dodgers, the L under Los Angeles, and then they will capitalize that. If you want to get into verb tense and subject-verb agreement, there's some nice abbreviations so you don't have to work on all that again. My guess is you're still going to have to write it out for them so they understand what the heck you mean. A lot of this is really for people who should know better and just need to have that corrected for them. And we all get varying degrees of the students, so we're going to have to decide how much they need to know. In this one, when you have a word they know, they simply circle and put a slash through a word if you see down near the bottom, an unnecessary word. I still think the delete sign, where you just do that lowercase e, more or less it just goes swooping up, is a better way to show something ought to be deleted. If I find a word is missing, I would rather put a caret there and actually write in what word, or at least say, there's a word missing here, go find it, and let them know they gotta go find it. So I use these, and if I were going to, I want students to understand it, so I will tell them it's either in the back of the book we're using, or I'll give them some sort of handout to work with so that they understand, so they know the symbols I'm doing rather than us all just try to translate hieroglyphics. So and here's some more. Most of these I just don't get into because more often than not I'll just stick a caret, I'll extend a line into the margin, and then just start writing. So here's where that one goes. Awkward sentence, yeah, how many times we need to do that. So there's a few there. What I've taken to doing though more recently is just go digital. So I don't know if I'm telling anybody something you haven't done already, but I like to talk about track changes and comments and words. Is that okay? Or am I telling you something you already know and wasting your time? No? Okay.
Yeah, like I do it now.
We'll do it? Okay. Well, obviously here's where you go to get track changes. So we're going to just a simple thing, change the names, and it'll at least show them what they've got to do. In this case, I just want to change. I want to make some change so you can see what I was doing here. So, and then if you're going to do a comment, you obviously have the same menu, which is that review menu in Word. You can highlight something and then put the comment over to. It will set up comment space over in the right. What I often will do is tell them, this is passive voice. We're discussing this earlier. I'm not going to, in the beginning of the term, I will correct it once or twice, say this is passive voice, this is how I fixed it. And then after that, I just write, this is passive voice, and just keep digging in.
You say you're more passive aggressive in the early part?
Yes, I am. I'm more aggressively passive. Yes. Here's one that needs a little more work on, so I'm tracking changes. These are, whether it's just the wrong words or whatever, and then try and give him a little, I'm sorry I couldn't make this bigger, but you can see in the comments there, hey, you were missing a word, and that's why I fixed it. And you need, and telling him in general, you need to discuss, you need more. And some of these are stylistic things, particularly the art department that I'm banging on for, let's say, dollars, how to do that, etc. So I find this works better. Number one, I'm not killing as many trees. I can get a little more, I can really type away and explain something in depth if I need to, and and still make the corrections in the copy, and they can see where I changed it, and then if I think I need to explain why, then I can explain why. Or I can give them long explanations, and etc., whatever I feel is necessary, and they know they can read it as opposed to trying to read my handwriting, which I think most of the time is good, but maybe not always good enough. The thing to remember is if you're going to pass this along afterwards is to take the comments off. I've had theses come back or other papers come back to me where I sent it back, sent it to them, and then it came back to me with all the comments on it because they couldn't figure out how to remove them. So I just had the process, which is to, on the top here, go to final, showing markup, and you have to bring it down to the next step, which just says final, right there. And you also have to go over to this button and accept all changes. You have to do both, or else they're still going to come back and haunt somebody. We've also had business contracts come back to the department where somebody says, I think we could ask for more. So, yeah. Or other comments you don't, things you don't want said or don't want passed along. That's why it's so important to accept all changes and then go to final markup. So those are this is what I got. Here's your 10 minutes.
I also like track changes because that way students can't come back to you and say, oh, I never got your comments on that draft. And you're like, yeah, I did. I sent it to you, and I have an electronic record of it, and
Yes.
You accepted it in your email on the 14th of March.
Yes. Yeah, there's much better for that. I mean, that was 2 years, that example I showed was 2 years old. And if I, so there it is. Just this matter taking back, as opposed to when you marked it by hand. How many of us photocopy what we're talking about? And you know, and that's what I was doing when I was also teaching journalism classes, because then they didn't get the grade until they made the changes, and then for life I couldn't remember what the changes were until I finally started doing this.
But doesn't that in some ways, I mean, it's really easy for them to make the changes then.
Well, no, because after a while I'm saying move this, rewrite. There's
Okay.
if it's just right, if it's just those corrections, no, it's not going to help. You're right though. If it is already in place, then all of it's.
Yeah, because my other habit when I do it online electronically, and then I tend to try to fix their mistakes more often than saying, this is a mistake, figure out how to fix it.
Yeah.
Like rewriting sentences.
Yeah, then that's why I was mentioning, you know, is it gets to a point now, just this is has to fix it, or this is the wrong style, or this, you know, this is an awkward sentence, this is a run-on sentence, this isn't a sentence, whatever it may be, and then expect them to, you know, come back to that.
How could you do a paragraph like that, and then, you know, the rest.
And then after that,
This is what,
from here
what
on,
you're doing, you can make, but, you know, because there's gotta be some kind of, right, rewrite the whole paper,
Yeah.
right on, and more often on the draft, I mean, it's nice that you're doing this after the fact, that's awesome. I spend my time doing what you just described, if somebody sends me a draft before the actual paper, that's really, I would find that draft.
it's good, but it does have, right, if you get too carried away, then they say,
Yeah.
oh, thanks, you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hoping, right, if those lines are through it, and you've made changes, you're hoping that they'll look at it, they go, oh, I shouldn't do this anymore.
I do
Yeah.
have a lot of comments. I've noticed, so in one paragraph where I actually go through, this is where you have a comma or something, whatever. I utilize that comment box a lot to the point where it's probably really annoying for the students to keep reading them. But that way, I'm not making the changes for them. I don't know if that's right. Maybe I'm wasting my time. I don't know.
Well, Greg, perhaps you can enlighten us.
Well, it's a question as to whether, you know, is it collaborative, are you trying to make a good product, or trying to make a learning environment? I have some documents, you guys. That's some charts that we collected over the spring semester, or the fall semester, excuse me, at the Writing Center. First one is reference codes versus number of students. And my work study, runs everything, we did Lockhart until major, and I'm going to put the charts together for me. These statistics all come up in this Writing Center client report that everyone comes to the center should get one of these. They should get the yellow copy. So if you want to use the Writing Center as part of the drafting process, and you want to take a draft that we looked at, this is a receipt that they can be sure to ask them for this. And we keep a copy of it in the database. The white copy stays in a file, and then it's database, and we can look at some of the information. So we had just shy of 800 consultations in fall term. And you can see that, you know, C3 revising was the most common. The comma was also a big draw. Now this may be a little bit, this is the first year we've used these codes and this particular report, because we've gone to using this writer's reference book in the Writing Center, and I think it'd be a great book to adopt more broadly. Like any of the books, it's got a short piece on MLA, a short piece on APA, but unlike the one that we used previously, the Lester Writing Research Paper one, this one has things about columns. This one has things about semicolons. So the other one didn't have a lot of grammar, which we do see some grammar. We have, and so my people are still getting used to using those codes. Our old client report forms had these check boxes, which were more general, but easier to write down. So I know when I take turns in the Writing Center that I have a lot of, say, W4, which is not very well reported on here. That's appropriate language, using slang or idiom rather than something a little more formal. An example would be, well, I can't think of one. But you can use.
You guys.
Well, something like that, or something general for. I'm trying to look at one for the paper I looked at last week. Simple things that just make the paper sound juvenile. You know, rather than saying something increased, say it got bigger or something. That's a bad example. But that's kind of codes that and information that the students get. So the student has one of these forms. They can track what they what comes up on this form back to this, and they come in and look at this in the Rec Center. Yeah.
What about organization? Because I've noticed my students can't organize papers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not trying to put them down or anything, but they have a really, and I know it's really hard to organize papers,
Sure.
it's hard to organize those thoughts. But is that part of the planning or the outlining stage?
Yeah, this one has a section on organizing.
Because I was quick, but where would that be, I guess, in your codes here?
Well,
Or would it not be?
making global revisions, providing comments, proofreading, it's got T3 would probably be one of them. So,
What is C1 then?
C1 is planning, assessing the writing situation, exploring ideas, drafting. So it gives examples for them, because people come to the Writing Center sometimes with only an idea. And so this has some of those ideas, like the clustering exercises that people have. So they come to the Writing Center many times alike. Sometimes they come to the Writing Center 2 or 3 times on the paper. We could even print them out there. We'd have a copy budget and a little card. So, and my workers prefer to work on paper rather than punch over a desktop or screen or a laptop with it. Now that may change if you all can convince the administration to get a bunch of tablets. That'd be great. Some iPads. We'd like some iPads to try out. So that's the way we track the types of errors we have. And so we see papers at all kinds of levels. So sometimes organization is the thing that they need. But I agree that sometimes that's the thing students need quite a bit. And when I talk to my own students one-on-one, I'm often saying, this paragraph doesn't fulfill what your topic sentence said at this point. So that's because it's 2 different paragraphs. One goes here, one goes there. So that kind of thing has to be.
Do they need to make appointments for the Writing Center, or they can just walk
They don't have to. They can just walk in. Although, especially in the fall semesters when there's so many people coming in, 800 sessions we did, they're advised to do so. Around midterm.
They do that through the portal, or?
The IT department is going to try and write me a program so that they can do it through the portal or some other online way.
Okay.
But right now, they go to the Writing Center, and even when the Writing Center is closed, there is a schedule on the lecture outside our door, and it's up there. And so, and the advantage of that is they can sign up and they know exactly, if they work with one consultant in the past, they can work with that same person again. So sometimes they establish a relationship and they know each other's work, and that can be very helpful.
Yeah, going along with what we were saying, in that, if you want the student to produce critical thinking, which means, they have substantial understanding of the materials. And habitually they seem to just sort of, okay, I have one thing to do, and then just sit down there on the computer and start writing, okay, start writing like this, right? And then they can't quite stop and say, how do I integrate all it? So they typically go to Webster's dictionary. According to the Webster's dictionary,
Yes.
the culture is, and then we talk nothing of Webster's definition of culture, but a culture in a sort of anthropological, approach of understanding and reading all these discussions, and so that you can have a little bit more depth, right? So they just kind of write through all this and just ignore all that, and then they just brand new definition out of Webster's dictionary, and then they start writing something about what is nothing. It doesn't get any more substantial beyond that, because they are not really, they face that way to assign sort of reactionary rather than reflective. Or,
Yes.
And so this is why I'm wondering if that planning is something that we have to work in orientation to say, you can't just write a paper that night before, because it's not going to produce any critical, you can't reach.
Yeah.
They have
They have to have a question to start. They're really
right.
Because when I was your press records, you have to look up
Now that, they wouldn't have that way to get into a paper, they've got to do that, write that sentence, but they have to take it out, they can't leave it in there. That's the problem, is they like to write things one draft. And with the example of organization, for example, you can't have the paper organized until you at least have a full draft. It's very difficult to do it as an abstract exercise. You have to you teach yourself for reading what you just read, I think.
Exactly, and so that's why the student, the first paper that you write is just really the just the basis from which to build it up. So you have to write a second paper, third paper, and then see how long it takes to write that. You can't do it now before.
I think one thing, Keiko, that we, and I don't know how much this happens, but we need to all commit to not, I think sometimes we let papers like that go. And that student, if you really think they haven't done it, they shouldn't get a very good grade. And that seems like something to me is a time management thing that they have to learn through trial and error.
Yes.
And it seems like they're not going to learn that until they fail. We all commit to failing that, or giving them the back grade giving them the grade that they think they earned, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know that, I think we all kind of, oh, nice try, so we'll bump you up a little bit, and that doesn't help them in the long run.
It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see what the grade spreads are and to try and normalize it down. I just wanted to move on to the next chart. If I could. This chart shows that we get a lot of new students even all the way throughout the term, and so you can kind of see from this new and returning students. So a number of new students all the way through the term, but also a number of returning students. So students who do come to Ryan Center find it valuable throughout. Here's the biggest problem that we're talking about a minute ago. With this new report form, I'm able to track days before due. So they're coming off in time. And I see some of these drafts, and they're not very well developed drafts. It's not second or third draft. And some of them are even coming to Ryan Center the day it's due, 0 days before due. That's a problem because that's a week. They can't revise it all if they don't give themselves the time to do so. So I would like to see this chart reversed. I'd like to see the tall bar at 5 days out. I really would. And maybe people could address that by simply assigning again. This receipt. You could ask them to turn this in with the paper. You could have them do a draft that is totally on their initiative. You wouldn't necessarily have to grade it other than done or not done, but that could push them to do it some day before it's due. Because this chart shows a kind of, if nothing else, it shows the fact they don't understand that writing is not sitting down at a blank screen, starting with word 1 and ending with word X, and calling it a day. That it needs to be something that's written in a recursive fashion. You write a bit, read, rewrite, write some more and stuff, and continue to go through it. When I have students from my classes come to my office and they think they can't write that much, I said, well, look at the issue you raised here and here and here. All 3 of these things are going to require some research. Go find out about that stuff. And so they do, if they will read what they wrote, they do know what they need to learn. They have to think about it. They have to actually look at what they wrote before they can discuss it.
Would you suggest, some people in our department do this, like Ed, Marianne, and I do this. They, on their syllabus, say a draft of this paper is due 2 weeks before the actual final paper is due. That's part of their grade if they turned it in, but they don't necessarily get a grade on quality of that work. Is that suggested course of action to instructors, or is that?
I think I would kill myself if I had to read papers multiple times.
Pardon?
I think I would kill myself if I had to read papers multiple times and specifically go through and edit papers.
So we do that. We do that for our lab reports, as for our freshmen, because that's one of our specific goals for the course is to get them to be better at writing. And how long is lab successful? Well, we have them write it. There are different sections. We have them write different, so they're one page piece. And so they'll have an introduction to this week, and then we turn that around and get it back 2 weeks later. And then they go through and do each section once, and then at the end they turn it all back in. And it's painful. It's very painful to get through. I think it's been successful, but it's not as successful as I'd like to see.
Well, what I ended up doing is I can't sit through and read these topics over. It's bad enough having multiple papers on a single topic. For the intro to phys ant class, I have 30 students in there too. So what I make them do, and this goes along with organizing, is first I make them turn in summaries from 3 research articles. They've turned in a paper topic in the beginning of the semester for 5 months. Then they have to send in summaries of 3 articles relevant to their paper, which they get graded. Then they have to give me an outline of their paper with each paragraph of the thesis will be, and their introductory paragraph. So I judge their writing abilities by their introductory paragraph to see if there's any major issues in sentence structure. Do you know how? Right. Are they typically sentences?
Yeah, right.
But then I just did that final thing.
Yeah, because I was ready to say the pencil through my eye.
when, I'm sorry, but this is why you guys are in the English department, I'm not, that I had the world culture papers, and they were coming in like multiple drafts, and they were all bad.
Yeah.
And they weren't
This is
any
why-
better, and I guess that's what was frustrating, so then I sent them to you guys, and this is not a criticism of you at all, or anybody, it's not, please, this is not a criticism of anybody, anywhere, at any point, except me, because I'm like, what am I, okay, so I'm making these corrections.
They're
and
probably
then-
just making the corrections,
Right.
specific corrections you put there, and like, okay, I fixed everything she said and turned it back in.
It's not a process, like.
They feel exactly the same way about as you do. They would rather stick a pencil through their eye than read and write. Yeah, so that, I mean, I gave up on revision
Okay.
probably 12 years ago. That this was not a method because they simply won't do it.
Right.
So I've tried to come at it from the opposite direction of planning.
Okay.
So part of their problem, it seems to me, is they try to write before they're ready. If you haven't done research, if you don't know the topic well, what are you gonna do except sit down and write what the dictionary says? Because you can imagine that you're gonna write the first word that's gonna be read and then write in a linear order down to the last word. You have no other strategies if you're not ready to write.
Exactly.
I've struggled with having them write outlines though as well.
Yeah, and also write the traditional outline, because they associate that with high school and busy work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
like this
it's
is
just like,
right.
this will be the introduction.
Right.
This will be-
This is one of my 100 note cards for which I will get 20 points of total grade, and, you know.
I don't know, I was actually really impressed with a lot of the outlines I just got from this
Maybe
group.
your
that I
direction is
outlined.
already more specific.
But there are some that obviously, I said, you need to go and see the writing center, because what you're stating as paragraphs are going to be are not even supporting what your topic was. I don't see a connection.
You know, this fall, right, this fall, the adult education asked me to see if I could teach math course, which is the accelerated program, right? And I thought it was very interesting because they cut down the contact hour in half, right? And of course, the number of students is almost half too. So I thought I would do a little study if I can. Create the same syllabus, right, for the traditional student and the math student for Asian study, Asian cultures class. And then the difference between the two is that the math program people are expected to do self-study before they come into the class. So they are automatically, I'm gonna have to do some physics to, come for their self-study. And then it will be interesting because you see, if you're forced to do the self-study to prepare for that test, that means you have already been thinking about and doing that, which I don't think traditional classes students do that. They don't even do reading sometimes. They don't even, some of them we don't even purchase textbooks, I know that. They just simply react to the assignment and do this. And then they come up with the kind of thing. And so, if that's so, then I'm wondering, as a part of the process of learning, if there is something valid in the self-study, we should encourage that, that kind of thing, so that, and they have to come to class prepared, you know? Because this, by then they have gone through the first process, right?
And that's what a lot of the theory behind, I think, flipping the classroom comes from. You have to do all the work outside. Well, no, but you have to have to come prepared so that your time in the classroom is used.
Right. And that would
Efficient.
increase your receptiveness too, right, to the materials.
And I think that's something, I think we assign readings to have them do that stuff, but you have to do something to force them to do that.
Right.
You have to do it over and over and over
Okay.
to make it part of your culture so that they do continue to do it.
Right. You have to-
I have trouble with follow through. I have a great first 3 weeks, and I'm all ready to go, and then I kind of lose that, and so by the end of the semester, I'm like, why aren't you doing anything? And it's my fault, because I'm not continuing.
The last one I'll make is that this chart shows that the students come to the Writing Center are bringing English department papers by and large. Three quarters of them are English department papers. And that's by and large, there were some writing courses. And so we had 800 or so visits in the fall, but far fewer in the spring. And so it would be a good idea to encourage writing in the spring because we have a capacity and it's not being used. And students can come quite often. And that's just a change, term system to semester system, now we have all of our writing classes in the fall, and it drops off considerably. I mean, I know our international lit courses still require a paper, but the majority of students are coming to this research and writing papers, which I promise you we teach them all these things. You know, like not to quote the dictionary, all that stuff.
Just say the random content generator key on their computers. Just say one key, and I think it's the F8.
Well, they have a random.
Yeah, there's a random content generator. I'm sure there's a random content generator key that they hit every time, and then I keep trying to get them to disable it because I see these random
A
content.
lot buttons too.
There's a lot, but yeah. There were a lot of results that I had to examine.
My biggest problem with papers is that it's been a long time since I had an English class, and I use that awkward sentence a lot, and it's probably not just an awkward sentence, but I don't know exactly what's wrong with it, and it's not great. And I struggle with that because then I'm left with, well, the only thing I can tell you is how I can write to make it sound right. This isn't right, can't tell you why, but it's just something along these lines.
I'm not letting them come see me and read it out loud, either to them or they read it out loud, and then you say, does that sound right? And then that helps a lot.
I tell my students, because I got my university all 15 years ago, that you have to read papers out loud yourself. And I make my students don't have to send me until you have read it out loud, not to say this. And then as a student manual, do this every time I do it, and I'm trying content to be, but I know that sounds so silly.
Oh no, I do it all the
Catch a
time.
lot of stuff.
Yeah, tell your,
I
tell
just-
them.
I guess I just have this fear that even if I tell them, they're gonna come to me and be like, well, why is this wrong? And be like, it doesn't sound right. I don't know. So is it okay to just write awkward? I mean, I use awkward sentence, and I use sentences used to be reworded a lot.
Shoot me a couple of examples, and I'll see if they have maybe a comment. I
Okay.
can tell you this is the problem.
Yeah, something that's way back here in that memory.
Yeah, I mean, very likely what it is, they started one sentence and finished a separate different.
Yeah,
So
so is that
subject-
considered fragmented or just no?
There's all kinds of ways of
Okay.
talking about it, but what it probably is the subject, and it doesn't have subject. So it probably has introductory element or introductory phrase or clause, and it has no subject, because they changed their mind halfway through and they finished, so there's no subject or the predicate's fault or something like that.
Okay.
That's what it usually is. And that's because they have it read out loud, or they start revising it while they're typing it, and that's what I would guess.
I will say though that students really don't know how to un-awk a sentence.
To what?
They don't know how to un-awk a sentence.
Sounds awkward.
Yeah, they just, and then that just, okay, fine, whatever. But they don't know, what to do with that.
Sometimes
Whatever,
Yeah.
right.
what I sometimes do is
Like
I
it's
try to come to students here to my office. So what did you mean to say? And then I say it orally, and then I say, well, why don't you then just record what you said to say, okay, I wanted to say blah 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 blah, right? And then on the tape, and so because you just expressed the right kind of thought there, So I said, oh, I didn't think about that. I could just talk on the tape and then rewrite it more.
But then do they get frustrated because you tell them, don't write the way you speak?
Right, but they have to change, And I have a question, how do you deal with the students from other cultures? And other cultures, and not only in their skills in English, but also their rhetoric, the way they perceive things, sometimes backward, the order-wise, or the way they use it, and so forth. Do you run into that kind of issues?
I'll correct, but I won't give out points if, depending, if I have a sense that they're really, they're struggling to learn the language, I'll correct, but and then just not do that. So it's hoping by the end of the term they pick some of this up, and if it's still going on, then maybe sit down and talk. I'll do that more with the English as second language kinds of folks who would be, the foreign students as opposed to somebody from New York or Ohio. Not necessarily.
Just for fun, I have asked several students in the past, I said, could you write this in your native language? And if I happen to know that native language, all my guys, what is the difference? the critical thinking is so, it's shining, it's like, and in English, it's like, you know, hello, how are you? It's like that, and so I mean, I didn't need to grade their, you know, essay in their original language, but at least I know what they're thinking, you know, and so at least I can credit their thinking.
Yeah.
This handout that I just gave everybody is from the, as you can see, University of Michigan Writing Center, and this is really meant, I suspect, for their new faculty and their TAs, because they have a lot of use of that. But what struck me about this as being particularly useful is all of the stuff that you can do to prevent bad student writing, right? Because I just take it as Murphy's Law. If students, all left to their own devices, they will write pretty poorly because that's their habit, because they've been able to do it fairly successfully through school or they wouldn't be here, right? So it's not like this has been a totally failing strategy for them, but what I like about this is it gets us to think about, well, what do we want to have happen in the student writing? Am I trying to get my students to write publishable material? If that's the case, then that's a whole different set of strategies than if I want to know how well the student can analyze various readings, or can apply, or can synthesize, or can do those kinds of things. So I'm going to see that as separate from the mechanics of their writing for the purposes of trying to respond to their writing. The thing I'm not going to do is do a lot of editing, because I'm using them to get better as an editor. And if that's what my next career gig is going to be, then okay, I should be doing that, because I want all the experience I can. But if I want them to get better at doing that, then I've got to make them do it. I've got to say, you know, this is really bringing me down. I'm having a really hard time understanding what you're saying here. You got to go fix this. Oh, really? I do? Yeah, because I don't understand what you're saying. So I'm like responsible for that. Like, it's this really big, you know, and this is not just with freshmen, but this was really? Like, people really care about that? I just thought it was, you know. Yes, yeah, exactly. So despite the fact that they've been through 12, 13, 14 years of school, this is still all coming as a, and I think that the usage of the Writing Center says it. This is something you have to worry about for English teachers. Outside of that, nobody really cares, so you don't have to, you know.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
Yeah, right? I mean, so unless everybody in a department is getting together and saying, this is our Maginot line, but in a good way, right now. This is our Maginot line. We are not, you know, taking anything across this. Then it's going to be, as we were discussing before everybody came in, it's going to be like, oh yeah, Bill, what was your student came in and asked Shelley what?
Are you going to require passive voice too? Require active voice. In our department, you know, I spent a whole term saying you need to use active voice, and I dinged them every time they use passive. And then her first question, like a month into the term, she goes to Shelley Fries, who does follow the course after mine. Are you going to require us to stay away from passive voice too? And I'm sitting there at the time. Yes. I blurted it out. I mean, the questions Michelle asked me, yes, this is for every class. And then the next day, when my class came up, I stood up there and said, this is for everything, not just me. So.
Well, I need to learn too with Word how to check those boxes so it'll look at grammar for you. For like fragment, I know it can be a pain in the butt, but if you go, I mean,
yeah, it's about 4 clicks in, but you can get there.
Yeah.
I showed them that.
Yeah.
It's not foolproof, but it's a
This
step.
brings your attention to,
Yeah.
hey, this isn't a fragmented sentence, probably.
And they probably made more use of that in high school, because again, they were forced to do it, right? And so they had to have some evidence or some proof, like maybe they had to print out a prior draft proof that they actually did this, as opposed to they're just turning in, you know. But the other suggestion that I think is really worthwhile as a takeaway is designing an assignment, right, that's going to give the students a fighting chance. Like, you know, there's always going to be people who are going to ignore what you give them, or, you know, they're not going to take advantage of the help or the assistance or whatever. Sure, but there's a great number of students out there, I found, that really want to be able to do well at this, but they really don't have a clue about how to organize an essay. or an argument, or whether it's a synthesis argument or an analytical argument or whatever, they are not familiar with the kinds of writing that we do as professionals. So to give them models of things that that are at their level of understanding, so maybe it's like a previous student's, this was a really great example of this, and here's why it was really great. So to take the annotation that we might do, and to do that, to show them, this is why it's really great, this is why this is a really great thesis, because it does these 4 things, or this is why this is a really great use of research to support your point, because it's saying exactly this. And to kind of, do with new class, and including the freshmen, but with new classes of people that I've never had before, I'll bring in a good, kind of like an okay, it's not terrible, but it's only, like B-ish, and then a really terrible example. And give it to them and say, okay, what would you give these as grades? And why? And put them in little groups. And it's really revealing because they know the difference. It's not like they don't know what's good from okay, from terrible. They do, but unless, there's some kind of like seriousness about this in terms of, here's what you can do to get that great thing. It's not magic. You don't have to be born this way. It's not rocket science either. It's planning, and part of planning is organization. And here's a setup. You can use this. It's pretty foolproof. Invented by Aristotle. Stood the test of time. It ain't going anywhere. And they're, oh, okay. So I could use this to plug in any info. Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, I'm going to keep using this then.
So you can take that kind of class.
In
too.
class,
So for instance,
yeah.
instead of just putting in a paper on Blackboard, which is I do.
Right, because they won't read it.
I noticed this. Yes. You
Right.
would take the time class and say,
Mhm.
okay, your group to break me out, here you go, kids,
Right.
students.
Right. And then I'll do a little, here's, I've been doing this with my English 200 class. So from the beginning of the year, I did a little, okay, this is the kind of question that you might find yourself having to answer in this class as we go through the material. I want you to answer it, take like 15 minutes right now. I collect them and I will go through them because it's a short amount of stuff that they can write in 15 minutes. So even with 35 kids, I can get through these pretty quickly. And I'm looking again for really good, okay, and not so good. And I don't use the actual words, so I will, abstract from them. So I'm not hurting anyone's feelings or, embarrassing anyone. Oh, I know you wrote that, and that was the good one. No. So I'll abstract from those, but then say, okay, why did this one get full points? Why did this one lose some points? Why did this one lose a lot of points, right? And just to do that modeling, I'll do it maybe a couple more times, and it only takes 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next class, it takes me 5 minutes. I give them back. We show them, oh, yeah, okay, right, yeah, we see that, right, yeah. Questions about that, like, what would you do differently now? How would you help the person who's done only the mediocre one? How would you help the person that did the really terrible one? And just one more time, maybe give that before an assignment that's asking them to do exactly the same kind of thing. So I'm not like tripping them up and saying, okay, I'm going to do something completely different that has nothing to do with what we've done so far. So I'm really like stacking things, one on top of the other. So by the time they do have to sit down and write something formal, they've done a lot of writing for me. And I'm like really, I know it's a pain, but I'm really like keeping them writing all through the semester. Like every, I might at the end of the class, 5 minutes left, okay, you got to tell me what have you gotten out of this, and you got to put it in prose that's halfway decent and it's got a really high point. Collect it, okay. Oh, everybody's doing okay, or no, we still have 2 people over here in the holdouts. So it's not a lot of work in that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm reading these 30 horrible papers over and over again, and it feels painless to them, but it also feels like we're getting a lot of feedback. I must be doing okay in this class because I'm getting, happy faces or, whatever it is. I don't use it. The open window is what I use for that happy, thing, like doing well. I'm getting a lot of those, so this must be okay. As opposed to, I'm just, it's all on this one kind of thing. And because my thing is I want them to get better as thinkers and processors. But in order to do that, like if I look back at my own self, if I'm able to write quickly something, why is that? Because I'm writing all the time. So of course I'm going to be able to do something kind of fairly quickly or fairly easily, or even a first draft and say, okay, yeah, this is good to go. Not, like in a formal sense, but something that I might put together for, in an informal way. This is okay, go, but that's because I'm writing all the time, so I'm trying to get them to, they don't want to, but I'm trying to force them to adopt the behaviors of real writers.
And that's where the self-study,
Yeah,
it comes in, and absolutely have to stress that, the freshman, that the preparation comes in this exposure to materials and wonderment, and so that wonderment and oh, I read this on page 54, and what is that? I never heard of this. That is a way and opening, to intellectual participation, right? So it's well, then we give you a chance to explain or ask the class what you think, when you read that page, And so these are very, very important. So I'd be kind of interesting to see how these two classes, could be compared.
sure.
And then another thing too is that, sometimes a student could just go on and on and on and on about something, or they just get veered off to something else, not really making a point. And so I made a 3 C's rule: concise, clear, and critical. And boy, that really made them, confine their paper. And also it's I know it goes against the really rules and things like that, but also ecological. So 1.11, which is 1 page, on one paper, 11 font, and then you can't use any more than 1 sheet of paper. So 11 font either side, 1 page, and then that's all you can do. But you can do pretty good work, critical work in that short space, small space.
Yeah.
So when you're grading, as you're going through their papers, if they do have grammatical or spelling or those kinds of errors, do you draw their attention to that at all? Okay.
Yeah, I do. So I like the 1 paragraph thing, right? So I'll look at 1 paragraph and say, whoa, especially if it's egregious. If it's distracting me from the content, then I'm going to let the person know, your ideas are good, and they deserve a way better presentation than they're being given right now. As opposed to saying, no, this is not supposed to. This is supposed to be error-free or whatever, or you're not supposed to have these kinds of things. But you wouldn't come to an important meeting dressed like a slob. So why are you undercutting yourself and your credibility and all of this by turning in work that looks like
That's
a
amazing.
monkey did?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're going to ask people for letters of recommendation. You want to be considered well as a good student by people, then yeah. If it's really terrible, they'll say maybe you want to check in with the writing center because you're probably not able to see your own errors. Maybe you need someone to sit down with you and show you the kinds of things. I'm happy to do that, but if you feel more comfortable going to the writing center, please start.
They come quite a bit, so
Yeah.
30-minute sessions, and that's to learn to recognize your own errors takes. You guys are right this thing.
Yeah, right.
It takes a long years.
Right, that's the other thing. I mean, we have to keep in mind that it does. It takes years to get to be good at this. And that's if you're devoted to it and you're doing it on a regular basis. You're putting in your 10,000 hours. I mean, our students are probably nowhere near that in terms of, it's not just our students, right? Or there wouldn't be all of these materials available. So,
Something I would say also that, about just about something like passive or active voice, you have to remember that we have to enforce they're writing for a purpose. To impress is one thing. That's why the format needs to be just so. That's again dressing well for interview. They need to think about what they want to communicate and what the audience needs. So they need active voice for you guys because you guys care what the actor of the sentence is. Active voice actor, But I would bet that in the lab reports, active voice is kind of out of place. Because you don't want that. And so they think we're just being arbitrary, which they understand it is more rule. It's what is the important thing. The important thing for you guys is method. The important thing for you guys who knows it.
Format, audience, readers.
Well, I think it's really important too, and this isn't something I probably realized until maybe last year or this year, is how much MLA is used because I use APA. And I don't really care, but I always used APA. And now I think maybe I should use MLA so that they're not so confused if so many other people.
I would disagree. It is a big pet peeve of mine. You need to learn to follow directions. And I've had you these directions to tell you exactly how the citations are supposed to be.
Yeah.
What you did to make sure.
So I
Yeah.
shouldn't give in. I don't think you should give in. I think
No.
I don't think. You know what's funny is I remember as a student being on that and
Yeah,
not,
me too.
really not getting it. And now I don't understand why my students, I mean,
I've had a demo all the time, because I'm doing this, I'm trying to be organized a little bit, maybe asking them in one class to use footnotes or endnotes. You know, it's not even, okay, well, I had just a demo that showing up like a footer, the same material 5 times on 5 different pages, because
I think
that's not a footnote, that's not, so, I mean, you're going through it, but it
I
started
should say
out,
part of it might be Word. I've had versions of Word before.
Well, they don't know the gear very well. I've had some manual put in headers.
Yeah.
They don't know how to hang indexes, they use the return tab to get hanging indexes, both APA and MLA share. So there's a lot of difference in APA and MLA, and there's just a few discrete differences, and they can learn them. So I'm with you.
So then you were saying they're just putting them in the footnote section, so it shows that in every single page.
yeah.
Instead of putting it in the
They're
footer.
clicking it in one
Yeah.
mark.
And I firmly towards your point. Well, look, the directions are here, the examples are here, this is what I want, and that's a doable thing.
If you're writing in the style of your discipline, it's an important thing to be able to master as soon as possible.
And I take them out of, I didn't even do APA, I make them do like our specific physical anthropology general. And that's the reason I actually split the writing assignments up in the first place, because I learned if I wait until the end, all of those citations are going to get incorrect, and it's gonna leave me in a really bad moment when I'm writing those papers.
These were
So I
the
make them do it, yeah, American Journal of Physical Anthropology.
Okay.
But I give them a specific sheet, the very first day of class, that shows all the examples as well as a link to the site for all the citations.
Can you give me that too, so we can have it in-house over there? 'Cause we'd like-
I also put, I don't know if I put the journal of physical peoples are, but I did the archaeology and sociocultural, and I put it on, I sent her Arlene Glazier, and she put it, on the library's web page.
Okay,
and
look
kind of-
at it.
Yeah, the guide, so that's there too, the links to everything's there for these colleges, I don't know what you call them. Sorry.
And just to be clear, students don't actually use MLA, they use a version of MLA that they remembered having learned in high school, correctly or incorrectly. So,
it's interesting talking about how we want them to write like professionals in the field, because I think that's part of our problem in biology anyway, is that a lot of our students don't think they're going to be professionals in our field because they're health leaders and they are going to be doctors and they will not be expected to write anything as doctors, which isn't true. But they really have no idea what it means to be a doctor or what they'll be doing. So that's the struggle that we have is here we all, we're all biologists, love biology, and we're trying to teach them all of the techniques of the field. Why don't we know this to a med school?
I'll hire somebody to do
I
that.
bet 50% of our students are biology majors and they don't like biology because they don't know med school. So it's
I don't want those doctors.
but at the same
Mhm.
time,
Like,
I just
I need a list of those people right now, Sarah, I'm gonna make sure.
But it's really interesting because at the same time, we kind of rely on that because 80% of our incoming freshmen are pre-med, pre-pharmacy, pre-something, and
yeah, they kind of need a wake-up call, right? Like, does someone come in and give them a little, here's what you do all day as a doctor.
they do, they get that eventually, but then they're kind of, okay, so I'm a junior biology major. I'm not gonna switch my degree.
Oh my God.
That's why you see that statistic, one of the lowest paying jobs is if you have there are pre-med degrees, and they're awful to get because they prepare you for nothing outside of med school. Most of them don't get into med school.
So what do they do, like work in filing systems somewhere?
Yeah, they not right.
I wish they could write that, but I don't think we should all hold the line on whatever discipline or format we see, we should hold the line on, because they can do it fine, go learn their phone system. They can clone.
Well, even after because I tell them, and I can be a little intimidating, that this is a big pet peeve of mine. When they do their article summaries, you have to provide citations so I can deal with it then. And I tell them over and over every day before those article summaries are due, make sure you look at the citations. I'm very critical of citations. Still, I don't understand it.
But thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps the rest of us too.
Right,
So,
right.
Your commitment to being legal to some of those things makes it seem like.
Well, and it's for ones I want to stay in the field, and actually this is not just an undergraduate, I mean, I review a lot of journal articles for certain publications, and they don't even follow direct the guide for authors, and I think right away, I shouldn't have to review it in administrative fees.
You know, it's
So that too,
interesting.
so it's not just like kids.
I'm just right now working on something to submit to a paper or to a journal. It's a journal. It's for just to be a lab that I created. But they want a certain, they use a Chicago style. So I saw that, looked it up, put everything in that, and then I was looking at recent publications in that, and they were not in that format. And so they're asking for this, they're not even making shirts in that, and now I don't. So I guess that tells you the quality of the journal I'm reading for.
Go back to Joanne's point about we have to help make students think. I had a student who was really black and white, and she almost threatened to sue because I was correcting how she was thinking, right? But she was putting all the right information in the right place, but she was not revealing her thinking. And so I said, where did you put her thinking? I said, look, I'm a straightforward student. I've always got this right. You are the first professor who asked me about that. And I go, she was really, yeah. So she said, well, I like to see your thinking. And she says, look, I am right. Am I not? It was some really hard person to really convince about that thinking.
And she's good at following directions.
It's
two different fields. The ones that can follow directions and ones that can follow directions that can't think on their own.
I think that would have been me. When I was a student, I was a very good student, and I followed the directions, did what I was supposed to do. And I went to a large school, so nobody called me out on that. Well, not nobody. There were enough classes, obviously, that I got that, but there were many instances where I know that I didn't think about things. I don't think my critical thinking skills were developed until I had been teaching for several years. But because nobody called me out on it, so good job.
Do you think things are changing in the times? But I feel like college is becoming more some high school lessons and everything. There's just always been. Are the problems earlier on, or are there secular trends that? So I feel like a lot of the things we're talking about doing is more stuff that I did in high school.
Well, that's what European schools, European students say about the American colleges, that they are like the continuation of high schools and not, it's kind of a glorified high school courses rather than, so there's a lot of sort of, like I said, call it not historical, but that's yoga. But it's the rehabilitation of, right, catching up so that you can have an intellectual basis to do this in your senior year. But you should be doing that right when you're coming to freshman year.
I feel like that's kind of a product of everyone goes to college, we need to get everybody in college, colleges need students because we need to keep the money coming in, and so that's kind of, I think that's a
It's just
product
the great
of
variation in class.
That's what I think.
If you remember the Onion, it's
Yeah,
a critical journal, so they had articles like crisis in Chinese education. The average second grader now in China is no longer able to be at a senior level. It takes a couple of grades now. So it's very well done. But has that clear. But yeah, this is who our students are. I'm gonna take them as they come, and if I can help, maybe if I can help do something that maybe should have been done before, okay, but now.
I'm just wondering if it's more widespread, like, because a lot of what we're seeing due to our demographics, or is it more of a widespread?
I think it's widespread.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some
That's-
elite schools that
Right.
can't be an issue, but vast swath, I think, basically.
It's something that I've changed now too. When I started, I'm gonna go very step by step, and it worked really well. The students learned a lot, but my better students were bored or frustrated with me because I wasn't challenging them. And so that's something that's changed for me, is that since I've been doing it longer, I now have raised the bar, and I expect the stragglers to come up there, and if they don't, that's kind of their problem, or they need to come see me and I can help them individually, and expect them all to be here rather than teaching down here, and that really ended up with these high averages too, because you're getting everybody to understand it, and if you didn't get
It's a compromise between making them learn and having all these small homework assignments and checking all their homework assignments and teaching them also to be independent people. And they're adults, they need to be responsible for doing stuff on their own.
I get that too, though, by the time they're seniors, we do something right collectively, that by the time they're seniors, most of them get it. They can think critically, at least, you know, they're still varying degrees, but they can think critically, they can write a decent paper, they understand that they have to do work, they get it eventually.
I
And
think you're right. It's fun to watch that too.
yeah,
Really.
to see them in an upper level class that they can do it. And you don't know at what point, and this is where the assessment thing I think is frustrating, because at what point do they get, maybe we'll figure that out. At what point do they finally get it and start doing it? I don't know.
Because organically it takes, everyone
Uh-huh.
with the cycle, that's like a, like a pie, A little over 3 years, because it's 3 years between choose and then that's why you have a focus on the senior years, because, biologically you become, something happens in the body.
Are the birds when you're doing that?
This is why you have a sophomore slump, because first year you're freshman, but you're only gaining the technical, skills. So that sophomore, okay, what else is there? But then they wake up and say, oh, I'm supposed to use these skills to think. And then in junior year, they begin to realize those skills that they learned in freshman year has to be applied. And then finally, senior project becomes it, and they say, okay, I'm going to use this.
I think there have also been senior, they do those senior interviews. I think sometimes the seniors have said, I wish I would have realized this. And I don't know if developmentally that they're able to do that until they get to be a sophomore and junior. A lot of them. But, I mean, there's nothing to do with that. Yeah. Just torture them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe another positive note, there's no